In this edition of Inspirational Africans, we bring you the story of Commander Dr. Ali Kamal-Deen. Commander Dr. Ali Kamal-Deen is the Director of Research at the Ghana Armed Forces Command and Staff College with additional responsibility as the Legal Director of the Ghana Navy. His expertise covers maritime law, international relations, defense and security. He has over 15 years professional experience in maritime affairs, including law of the sea, maritime security and strategy, ocean governance, shipping administration, management of offshore resources, and admiralty regulation and enforcement. He is the Executive Director of the Center for Maritime Law and Security, Africa. He also served as a member of Ghana Boundaries Commission, a member of Ghana Continental Shelf Committee, a member of the Legal and Institutional Committee of the Gulf of Guinea Marine Project. His success story will inspire you. Join us as we bring you the story of Dr. Commander Ali Kamal-Deen on Inspirational Africans. Be our guest. Very good afternoon to you, sir. Many thanks for joining us here on Inspirational Africans. Always a pleasure speaking to people like you.
It's also a very great pleasure speaking to you as well.
Because this is a program to celebrate Africans who have made it. And of course, you have made it. But a lot of people do not know where the story would have started from. When we see your beautiful uniform, many would believe that it all started from a very rosy path. Is that how it is?
That is not how it is at all. I think it takes a combination of faith and then determination to get to wherever you want to get to. As you rightly said, my name is Commander Dr. Kamal-Deen Ali. In the context of Ghana, I come from Wa in the Upper West region. I was born into an Ahmadi family, which is both a privilege and a challenge. And from there, I went through my education. Lived within the Jamaat, but also lived in a community that was also very hostile to the Jamaat. But with all and within all those challenges, inshallah, we've come this far.
And so I'm just interested in knowing how your story would have started, because coming from Wa, again, I know that community to be a deprived community, especially at the time that somebody your age would have been growing up. Tell me, how did you start with your education in this area?
I started my education at Wa Experimental Primary, and from there I went through Wa Catholic Primary also, and then to Laura Secondary School. I then came to T.I. Ahmadiyya Secondary School in Kumasi. And that led me into the University of Ghana, where I read law. But yes, at the time of growing, one could say that Wa was a very deprived community, at least not in the form that we have it now. It was a community that was so struggling with so many things. Perhaps our generation may even also be counted as lucky, but I'm recounting what we met during my generation. But within all that and within the environment that you are growing, you still give thanks to God, and that has brought us this far.
And again, still staying with your education, because I know you and your contemporaries grew up at a time that Arabic education was considered very important, to the extent that some even neglected secular education in favor of Arabic education. How did you combine the two?
You are very much true that Arabic education was deemed to be very important. But you know, with the introduction of Ahmadiyyat into the Wa community and the larger northern community, and perhaps the country at large, Ahmadiyyat brought that light where we needed to combine the essence of Arabic education with also the essence of secular education. So I will say that I just grew up within that time where this balance was seen as very important. So you were exposed to as much secular education as you were also exposed to Arabic education when necessary.
And again, when you mentioned Wa Experimental, you mentioned Laura Secondary Schools. These are not the schools you would usually hear of when we're talking about prestigious schools in Ghana. is it that you were an extremely extraordinary student, or that you came from a privileged background, so to the extent that even if the education you had in school wasn't that quality, you still came back home and you met some quality education? I'm just wondering how you did it, considering the fact that these are not top-of-the-notch schools in Ghana.
That's an interesting question, but I wouldn't put myself into any of the two brackets that you mentioned, neither privileged nor being an extraordinary student. I think that perhaps I'm one of the many Ahmadis that God wanted to chart a path for, a path that will be useful and that will build you into an instrument where you can contribute to community and Jamaat issues, but also to serve perhaps in future as a role model to other people. So I was neither exceptional as a student, nor did I come from a privileged background. But I think it is part of the light and then the privilege of Ahmadiyyat that you will always have people within the community that will be lifted through the challenges that are embedded in the community, even in the country at large, and then you may find yourself surfacing and showing that, beaming that light, the light that is the light of the Jamaat. So that is how I will put it.
I was interested in finding out from you how you managed to go through your studies, considering the fact that at night it would have been a huge challenge trying to study.
That is very true. It was very normal during my time that we studied with lantern, and we had lights, but very few hours in a week. Perhaps for the whole week you will never have lights more than 6 hours. And actually we reserved, I'm sure they reserved the little fuel that we had for the entertainment night, which was always on Friday, beyond where you may watch a movie or something. But beyond that, we largely studied with lantern. And of course, you can imagine the smoke and the irritation into your eyes. So that was how we studied, not only me, but a lot of my contemporaries that were at secondary school during my time, be it Laura Sec, was secondary school, or Nandon Secondary School. That was how it was. And it was challenging, and we just not only that, we're also a deprived school when it comes to lecturers. Generally, our lecturers were the national service personnel. Some of them, a few were trained, but mostly they were untrained. So we were handled by people who, despite being committed to the job of teaching, there were many areas in which they were challenged themselves, and this is it. So it was always not surprising that you write your O-level and only a few of you will qualify. For example, it seems to me that we were about 120 that sat the ordinary level examination in the year that I completed, and it will not be more than 3 of us that qualified to go to sixth form at least. In the next 2 years, when it was the time for us to enter university, I only entered university with only 1 person. So out of over 120 people that sat the ordinary level examination, 2 years later, we had only 2 of us that entered university. And it will take another 3 years for another 3 of our colleagues to also enter university.
That's interesting. And you say that you were not an extraordinary student. I find that a bit paradoxical. I mean, out of 120, you were one of the 3 that went to sixth form, is that what you say? And then one of the 2 who proceeded to the university. That was a huge achievement. But again, I know, still on education at Laura, that the road network to that school wouldn't have been what it is today. How were you commuting between Wa and Laura?
Those days, there were very few times in the week you may have the OSA, the bus, which we used to call OSA, omnibus transport that will move. But largely we move with mammy trucks. And the road was very unmotorable.
We call them the bone shakers.
The bone shakers, yeah. So the road was very unmotorable. But that was the best you could do within the circumstance, and I think we did the best out of that.
Wow, interesting. Now, let's look at the reaction of your parents. How affable were they, for want of a better word, to education?
My parents were not educated at all, if you are talking about education in the context of secular education, and perhaps not even much educated in the terms of even Arabic education. But I think it was part of the light of the Jamaat that our parents who accepted Jamaat Ahmadiyyat, and my father was one of the very few, perhaps among the first 5 that accepted the Jamaat in the Upper West region. It was part of the light of the Jamaat that they had this enthusiasm in them to send their children to school so that they can benefit both from secular education and then Arabic education. So that was how it was. So most of us went to school, and perhaps we were always deemed as, at first it was considered still a kafir to go to secular education, but gradually other people in the community, including our brother non-Ahmadis, also bought into the idea and the importance of secular education. So it is not that they were affable, it's not that they were extraordinary in terms of possessions in terms of worldly possession, but it was just the light of the Jamaat that put them towards that direction, where they saw that it was important for us to have secular education as much as Arabic education or Ahmadiyyat education.
Well, today you have a PhD. We'll be coming to that topic later on, but you are also a lawyer. And whilst preparing to have this conversation with you, I spoke to a few people who say that at the time that you were called to the bar, there were very few people in the community that you come from who had become lawyers. And so you were one of the biggest icons in your community out there. And so naturally, everybody was expecting to see you practice in courts. You are in the Navy. What are you doing in the Navy? How did you get there?
Yes, I think you are true in saying that perhaps one of the very few in the Upper West region, and perhaps also largely in the country also, because if you look at the generation of Ahmadi lawyers, perhaps I may be somewhere in the sieve from the generation through Justice Said Kwekujan, through people like Honorable Malik and down there. So when you have a law degree, your path may traverse where you've never fully contemplated. So in my case, I did practice after being called to the bar for a year and a half or so. And then after that, I saw an advert asking for enlistment into the Ghana Navy. And I looked back also and I realized that of the 4 6-hour lectures that we had in the law of the sea, that I had special interest. And that took me to the Navy. But I said, never fully contemplated, because I cannot say that fully, that at the time I was joining the Navy, that it was in my full consciousness that I deliberated over the issue extensively before I joined the Navy. So your path may traverse in a way, and that may be part of your subconscious thinking, maybe a little bit of your conscious thinking, but perhaps largely the direction of Almighty God, where God wants to send you to.
But they say joining the military, and particularly the Navy, is a very arduous task. Where did you start from? And today you're a commander. How did you get there?
As an officer, I went to the military academy. And then in the military academy, it is tough, certainly. It is often, for us to say that in the first 3 weeks of your training in the military academy, if they asked you any question, very basic question, what is your mother's name, who is your brother, you will not be able to remember anything. And you go through this training for 1 year, go through the tough training, go through the skills training, go through the leadership training, and all that will build you into the officer that you are supposed to be. But it's something that is very tough, but it is one that you can always do with determination. It takes more of the mind to go through a military training than the body. So people with bigger bodies, people with that are very huge, may fall along the line or may not be able to meet the target along the line or not come out at the highest level. But once you put that mental state that you are here to do this training, you certainly are able to do that in a way that is very much appreciable. So that was my military training. And after military training, I went through quite a number of things. I think one of the early things I did after that was to do my master's, which was a civil program in the International Maritime Law Institute. And after that, I came back to Ghana. I went for a peacekeeping mission in Sierra Leone for a year where I was deployed. And it's interesting for such a deployment because I was just deploying about 9 days after my wife had given birth. So you are being called to duty when you are having a child that is less than 10 days old. But inshallah, I went to the mission in Sierra Leone for a year, and then I returned after that. and I carry on with the rest of my military career.
Interesting. And you talk about perseverance of the mind. Is that what led you to get a PhD, even though you were in the military? In the military, you are already revered, you already have everything at your disposal. You went for a PhD. Tell me about that story too.
Yes, I think on that I can say that whilst I was doing my degree course, I had an interest in academia. And I wanted to always explore, build my knowledge in different areas. So that is something that I can put a hand on at the beginning when I did a degree. And luckily, very early in my military career, I was able to do a master's program. For 2 master's programs, one master's in international law of the sea, another master's in international relations. And thereafter, I had a lot of professional engagements, and I felt that it was still important for me to do a PhD. Of course, I wasn't too old, although I was a middle level to senior level officer. I still felt that I needed to do a PhD, and then God being so good, I had a path to tread on again, and then I went for the PhD in Australia.
I realized throughout this conversation, even when I started asking you about your childhood through your days in secondary school to the university, you keep talking about God. And you keep saying, Inshallah. How important is religion in your life?
Well, religion is very important in my life and should be in every Ahmadi's life. Of course, everybody's life, religion is important. But in my case, as an Ahmadi, I was born into an Ahmadi family. Although my fathers, and my parents were converted into Jamaat Ahmadiyyat. And being born in the Ahmadi family is both a privilege and a challenge. The privilege being that you are within the light. The challenge being that how long will you be in the light and how will the light shine on you? So your nearness to God is very important, and your knowledge of the Jamaat and nearness of God. So I will say that I've tried as much as possible to live closer to the Jamaat principles and to live closer to God. So perhaps that's the reason why you find me referring back to God. And it seems to me, and I'm very much convinced in that whatever achievement you are having is your effort that is shown and that is being manifest, that people see. But behind that effort is an instrument of God or the hand of God that propels you in a certain direction. And that is something that I firmly believe in.
In a jiffy, I'll be asking you about whether or not there are any tangible things you can point to and say that this is what happened because of my belief in God. But before I come to that, I've also been talking about achievements in your life and recognition for works that you have done over the years. Do you recall any?
I do recall a number of them. In my military course, for example, when I did my senior command and staff course, I did it very early in my military career. I did my command and staff course when I was just about 9 years in my military career, 8 years in my military career, in fact. And I was doing the same course with people who were already 16 years in their military career. But by the grace of God, I came out in the military course as one of the most distinguished students, and also because I was a lawyer. Because I was a lawyer, it's not ordinary for you to be seen to be performing at the highest level, because you are talking about a military staff course that is looking through strategic, operational to administrative. So you should be able to excel in these 3 areas. Administrative, yes, perhaps you may have a lot of leverage as a lawyer, but strategic and operational is a different thing altogether. But I was able to have a very good grade at this level and graduated in what we will normally call the top of the class, and I had 2 awards that were handed over to me by His Excellency the Vice President of Ghana, who will normally be the one that will honor people at such a highest level at the Command and Staff College. Beyond that, I've also had a number of awards. Previously, I did my master's in Malta in the Mediterranean, and there I excelled, and I was the best in the law of the sea, and I was handed over an award again by the Minister of Transport of Malta, giving me the best prize in the law of the sea, something that I cherish so much, partly also because the institute was headed by Professor David Attard, who himself now is a judge of the International Court of Justice and who still hold me in very high esteem. The International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea, and who still holds me in very high esteem. Yes, beyond this, yes, a number of honors on the way also. Perhaps I can mention the fact that by the grace of God, I graduated from my PhD program with commendation, what will normally be called distinction or high distinction from my PhD program, which again is something that I can point to.
Wow, you must be a very proud man. And in all of this, we were preparing for this, and I said I was going to ask you about your award. Somebody said maybe your biggest award would be your family.
That is very true.
Tell me about your family.
That's very true. I'm married and I have 3 children. I have a girl called Yasmin, who is 12 years. I have a boy called Sarmat Ahmad Guiri. Sarmat Ahmad is the name that Huzur gave to him, and he is 9 years. And I have a younger boy who is 7 years as well. And
by Huzur, you're talking about the worldwide leader of the Ahmadiyya
Muslim mission. And my wife herself, coincidentally, also comes from a very strong Ahmadi family. Yeah, coincidentally because the narrators will say that my wife and my father were some of the emissaries that Haji Salih, Imam Salih used to send around northern Ghana to propagate the message of Ahmadiyyat.
For the benefit of those who do not know these people, who is Imam Salih?
Yes, Imam Salih was the one that brought the light of Ahmadiyyat to the Upper West region and largely to the northern part of Ghana. He is the current Amir and missionary in charge of Ghana. That is his father. And
so he used to send your father and your wife's father as emissaries. Okay, interesting.
And coincidentally, she ended up being my wife, and also being the same man gave birth to another important member of the Jamaat, Molvi Ghaffari Ahmed, who is currently serving and heading in Birmingham.
Okay, so I said I was going to ask you what your belief in God has done for you in terms of tangible things that we can point to. You've already spoken to us about your family. You've told us about some of the awards. Anything else?
Anything else? Many things to talk about, but I think I can put a finger on my PhD program, for example. When I started my PhD program in Australia, I wrote to Huzur asking for his guidance and his prayers. And I had a reply from Huzur. And then I knew that I was doing something that has received the guidance of my beloved spiritual leader. And very to the end of my PhD program, I was lucky that Huzur visited Australia during the Jalsa Salana in that country. That was in 2013. So I was very fortunate and privileged that the worldwide leader of the Ahmadiyya community, whom I had written to early, visited Australia. And I participated in the Jalsa Salana, which is the conference, a very region-wide conference that brought participants from the whole world, and particularly from the Asia-Pacific region. And then I had the privilege of having Mulakat, which is a personal interaction with Huzur. And Huzur took a special interest in the work that I was doing, that is the worldwide community leader of the Ahmadiyya Muslim mission. Our conversation was very intense, and he shared certain ideas on the work I was doing. And subsequently, I submitted my work 3 months earlier than I was supposed to. I was supposed to because I set a date that I was going to submit this in March or April 2014. And because of the early work, because of the work, how it came out quickly between November and December 2013, my supervisor felt that it was ready for submission, although I had doubts. Subsequently, the work went through 3 levels of examination, and at each level of the examination, a PhD with commendation or distinction was recommended at each level of the examination. So this is an indication of how the Jamaat can shine on your life. Right. In this case, I had an interaction with the worldwide leader of the community. He took interest in my work, prayed for me in my work, and that work came out very distinguished, and the work has now been published as a book by Braille and Martinez, who are the leading international publishers in ocean affairs.
Interesting. Unfortunately, we are running out of time, but I cannot go without asking you this particular question. You know that Islam teaches honesty, truthfulness, and so on and so forth. But again, it is a fact that across Africa and even here in Ghana, when troublemakers are looking for hoodlums to, launch their trouble, they look to Muslim communities and Muslim youth. Today we hear of Boko Haram, people who claim to be Muslims. Again, in Ghana, we have heard of these allegations of corruption, and sometimes some of the names that come up are names of Muslims. My question is, looking at what you have been through and where you have gotten to, what are the values that Muslim youth should be looking at in order not to be swayed to become hooligans, but to become people like yourself?
I think there are many factors that account for one, extremism or Muslims being seen as people of violence, and also factors that account for corruption generally. And we cannot discuss all that here. But there are very fundamental principles in Islam that will take you away from all this. First of all, our religion is a religion of peace. And if our religion is a religion of peace, founded on peace and harmony and security, if you have that in your mind, you can never become violent and you can never become this hooligan. Of course, certain times people are not properly guided. And this is where the light of Ahmadiyyat is very important. For this generation, anybody that is not within the light of Ahmadiyyat will have a certain light up to a certain level, because you have a living person that can direct you to the path of Islam in a perfect way, and that is the head of the Ahmadiyya Muslim, and that is the Jamaat Ahmadiyyat in general. So the point I'm emphasizing is that the principles of Islam that are actually found in the Holy Quran, found in the Hadiths, and the practices and in this particular generation being shown by the Ahmadiyya Muslim mission are pristine, and they are clear enough that if you stay within that, you are neither going to be somebody that will be caught up in disturbance of the peace of being a hooligan, or somebody that will be corrupt in society, because there are principles that are anchored on honesty, on sacrifice, and being dedicated to your community and being dedicated to your society, and above all, doing everything with the full knowledge that your God and Lord is watching you.
All right, and unfortunately, we've run out of time. Thank you very much, Commander Dr. Kamal-Deen Ali. So, what position do you hold now?
Within the Ghana Armed Forces, I hold a number of positions. In the Ghana Navy, I serve as the Director Legal for the Ghana Navy. In the wider Ghana Armed Forces, there is a college that we call Command and Staff College, which is of an international standing, perhaps one of the four in the leading four in Africa. We have, for example, students from 14 to 15 different countries in the college. And there I am the Director of Research, and I'm also a lecturer of international law within the Master's Program on International Politics and Defense. So these are the positions that I hold within the college, but I'm also the Executive Director of the Center for Maritime Law and Security.
Wow, and he has such small shoulders. I wonder how he's able to carry all these responsibilities. We've been speaking to Commander Dr. Kamal-Deen Ali, who is, you've heard from him, he's a lawyer, he's a lecturer, and above all else, he is a truthful person who has risen from nowhere to become what he is now. He says that, look, everybody else can become what you aspire to become once you apply the principles of truthfulness and honesty. And then again, he says that the knowledge of God and the recognition that he plays a vital role in your life is what makes all the difference, and is what has made all the difference in his life. We'll see you again some other time when we bring you another edition of Inspirational Africans. Assalamu alaikum.